Hello, and thank you everyone for joining us. Today with me I have Michael Eisenwasser. Is that correct?
That's correct. Very good.
Good. Yeah, it sounds Northern European for some, so that's why it must be. And Vestaters all the way from Australia. Thanks for joining us, gents. Yeah, basically we do this. Hello, we do this every week. As you know, we do it every Thursday at 4 p.m. Central European time and at 11 a.m. Eastern time. You can ask any questions live. We'll answer them. If you're watching the recording, you can always ask any questions. Send us any questions via email at questions@mappers.com, and yeah, we'll answer them. When we can. Jumping right away into discussion. You want to start, Michael? A brief introduction about yourself.
Sure. So I'm Michael Eisenwasser. I'm based in Chicago. I'm representing today with my Chicago coffee mug. We've got the bean in the Sears Tower.
Nice.
My personal life. I'm a father. I have two kids, and within the company, I'm a product guy. Working with Wes, he'll intro himself in a moment. Co-founder of Rapid Cloud, the most scalable hosting for WordPress in the world. And if you guys have heard of BuddyBoss,
Yes.
I'm also co-founder of BuddyBoss, which I ran from 2010 until last year, which led us into Rapid Cloud.
Nice. Thank you very much. Riz?
Yeah, Robert and everybody. My name is Wes Tatters. I'm the managing director at Rapid and also the infrastructure architect. Working with Tom and Mike, the two founders, we built a hosting business specifically designed to solve a problem that BuddyBoss effectively created, which is what happens when a WordPress site becomes successful. What happens when a WordPress site gets busy, has lots of users and lots of concurrency. And that's what Rapid was built for, as a purpose-built hosting infrastructure designed to help people scale from one user on their site to tens and potentially hundreds of thousands of users.
Nice.
Are you getting some audio feedback from Wes?
Yes, I think Riz, there's sometimes, especially when you speak, when it gets a bit louder, we get a bit of like
Little digitized computer sound.
like digitized.
Let's back off the mic a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think maybe it can be better. Thanks a lot for the introduction, guys. In fact, yeah, that was one of my, because I saw on your LinkedIn, Mike, you were the co-founder of BuddyBoss. So like it's a big switch going from software development into web hosting. Like what triggered that switch? Because web hosting is not a small business. Normally you need some budget, some resources to start. Kind of thing.
It is an ambitious project. On a day-to-day basis, for me, it's not that different because I manage the product development. So hosting has infrastructure, which Wes is doing, but from a customer experience, it is a user dashboard that I'm working on every day. But what prompted it in BuddyBoss is probably the hardest thing to host in the whole WordPress ecosystem. It is, for those who are not familiar, it is a live community. It is a community platform with live interaction. You have users all logged in concurrently, in some cases hundreds of thousands of users on some of these sites, and they're all logged in. It can't be cached. They have data updating in real time, notifications, messages, all that. And there's no host on the market that can handle a large BuddyBoss site. There's nothing. So we would have for 15 years, I see customers just constantly complaining about the performance, and we decided to do something about it. So we built a solution that is, you can have a BuddyBoss site that scales to a massive level, and we maintain the performance the whole way, whereas the other hosts will come to it, will basically it'll crash or stall out. And as a byproduct of that, almost by accident, we've built the most scalable hosting for WordPress generally, especially for sites where everyone's logged in. So like a WooCommerce checkout or an e-learning site, a LearnDash site, any sort of scenario where people are logged in and it's dynamic and it can't be cached. Rapid Cloud is really great for that. But I'm going to go into the story just a little more. So within BuddyBoss, yeah, it's a software product. But in 2020, we launched our mobile app, which is a really different type of product than what we were doing before. BuddyBoss, the community platform, is typical WordPress software and how it works. It's a plugin and it's a theme. But when we launched the app is hold on, can you mute? I'm gonna kid in the background. Thank you. So when we launched the app is a very different type of product. It's a React-driven headless WordPress experience, all connected through APIs. So it increases the server resources that are needed, but mainly when the customer wants to update their app, they need to generate a new app build. It has to actually compile and create a new app for them to upload into the iPhone and Android App Store. It's a native app. So prior to then, we were not a server type company, but when we launched that, servers became a core competency of the company. We had to have Android build servers for every time someone would want a new Android app. We had to have iOS build servers every time someone wanted a new iPhone app. And we had to have sysops who were monitoring the servers. And so it became a core competency, and we started learning more and more. And at some point we said, hey, you know what? We think we can build something really, really awesome that does not exist on the market, and we can actually launch a hosting company. Very ambitious, but we decided to take on the project and bring in Wes. And it's very expensive to launch a hosting company, but luckily for us, we had BuddyBoss, which has been a profitable business really, for like a decade. And we were able to use the money and the resources. We took a bunch of our staff and re-signed their contracts to our Rapid Cloud company early on. And we were able to take some of our best people and hire some awesome people and put capital into it and spend. We started working on this in 2022 and launched in a couple of years later. So we spent 2 years in the background using our resources to build this.
Nice, very interesting. So it almost happened like organically, kind of thing, because you needed something for BuddyBoss for the apps, and slowly
it happened organically, and it's not like an idea that came out of nowhere. I mean, Tom and I had talked about how we should start a hosting company for like the last 10 years because our customers are constantly having this problem, but we didn't know how to do it. It was not, our thing was it was just building software, but we've always wanted to, and we're in a unique position having run BuddyBoss that's tens of thousands of customers and who have the most complicated WordPress sites. Like we understand this market at a very deep level from all our experience doing this.
Nice.
One of the unique things about the sort of dynamic sites too is that they're very heavily shaped, which means that they aren't busy all the time. They can be busy in the morning, they can be busy at night, they can be busy just on weekends. And that busyness with traditional hosting translates into, well, you have to buy the biggest host you need for that busiest moment of the month. And Rapid was designed specifically to address that challenge. We have abilities to dynamically scale. We have the abilities to provide resources to customers on demand as they need them. And it dramatically changes the way you think about hosting when you put it in that perspective.
Interesting. In fact, that's one of your, I would say, unique selling points. In fact, on your About Us page, you have something like, we have developed a dynamically scalable hosting solution powered by bleeding edge technology. And so it's interesting because even like, as you were saying, even the business model is different, because usually, as you said, you go to a host, you have 3, 4, 5 different packages, you choose one and you just go. So because this is very, even from the technical point of view, it's very, very interesting. So can you give us maybe just a bit of a sneak peek of like what technology, or how is it built, like the infrastructure or the framework, how does it work, and how were you able maybe also to translate that to a business model? Because it's not easy to say, okay, someone is right now, their traffic is peaking, they need much more resources, and then all of a sudden, I don't know, 2 hours later they go back down and maybe someone else needs. What is the infrastructure behind that?
Yeah. So we use an averaging model. So basically what we say to a customer is, we'll sell you a plan, because customers need plans. They like some sort of predictability. And we'll sell you a plan that allows you to use an amount of resources across an entire month. But you can vary those resources as you need on demand. So providing your average for the month stays within the amount of plan, you can jump to a very, very high load, and it might be for a couple of hours a day, and then for other hours of the day you're on a small load. So you get this shared resource sort of plan, and we average that across a month for the customer. So it allows them to still have an understanding that we're in a plan, we're in a package, which gives them billability and ability to manage their budgeting. But it also gives them the flexibility to know that if something happens on their site, they get busy for whatever reason. They, sort of in a traditional hosting, they would have been getting a letter saying you've exceeded your acceptable usage, or, and in a lot of cases, crash. Our platform goes, okay, you've got some extra load. We're going to give you extra resources. And we'll add more resources. We eventually reach a cap because we don't want customers to scale out crazily, but our customer success teams and our support teams then have the ability to communicate in real time with customers, and we can even add additional resources in basically real time. If a customer says, hey, for whatever reason, my pair of sand shoes have just gone viral on USA Today, I need an awful lot of resources right now. Our platform has the ability to allow that to happen, and it happens dynamically. They don't need to migrate to a new server. They don't need to deploy somewhere new. It's like, SysOp team, add the extra resources. We can scale customers up to 192 CPU cores effectively, very, very quickly, in ways that sort of almost instant. I say almost instant because we have to tell Linux that it's just got a heap of new CPU resources, and that occasionally, depending on the infrastructure, requires like a 1-second reboot. But in statistical terms, if something's gone viral, the customer wouldn't even notice that it happened. They would just notice that the resources are available to handle that particular large-scale event in their website's life.
So, in the most simplistic terms, your uniqueness, or like where you really specialize in, is like you have this whole box of resources, and you are basically managing it and allocating where it's needed and stuff like that, instead of everyone trying to have as much as you can, kind of thing. Yeah, which is very interesting.
In a traditional model, at this sort of scale, a customer will be told, well, you have to go and buy an 8 CPU core or a 16 CPU core, server, or, AWS or somewhere, build their own, infrastructure. We're fully managed WordPress hosting, giving them that performance level and that dynamic ability to scale without them even needing to worry about it. They don't need to understand how to build an infrastructure on AWS or how to, manage a server cluster at Hertzner. It's managed WordPress. The dashboard is extremely simply designed so that people have all the tasks and tools they need in their dashboard. Up front, it's all about WordPress. There's plugins and themes and WordPress security and security, patch stack and Monarchs. All these things are in their dashboard, the things they need, right up front and visible in a very powerful dashboard that gives them a massively powerful, scalable VPS infrastructure sitting underneath it.
Nice. I'm presuming Michael was really involved in the development of the dashboard, right, Michael?
Yeah. That's my expertise. The thing I'm up thinking about all the time is the user experience. So you're working with developers, and developers they're all concerned about how things function and making everything work. Everything I'm always asking is, what's the customer experience going to be like? So I'm working with a lot with the dashboard and making sure that when the customer is in there, that it's very easy for them to manage the site. And Wes is helping with that, but his main expertise is working on the technical side, making sure from an infrastructure standpoint everything is working and that it's powerful. So he touched on some of the highlights. We in terms of the dashboard, some of the experiences we have. So we have, for one thing, we have live chat support 24/7. Our time to response is generally under a minute. We have excellent feedback on our customer support. That's built into the dashboard. And then we have all the tools that you would expect from a WordPress host, things like file manager, SSH access, ability to activate, deactivate plugins and themes and turn on WP debug, roll back to a backup, all of that kind of stuff. It's all built into the dashboard in a very easy to use experience.
Interesting. In fact, yeah, like thinking about the user and how they can benefit from such services. In fact, you also offer things like managed learning management platform hosting, managed online communities hosting, WooCommerce. Like, how does that work? Is it like, does it come as a whole package, or just WooCommerce and maybe you host your websites anywhere else? Or like, what are the advantages of, apart from the resources point of view?
Sure.
What is exactly managed WooCommerce hosting, for example?
Yeah. I'll explain. So we for some plugins, we go a little extra in terms of what we provide. So with WooCommerce, if you have a WooCommerce site, you will when you deploy the site, we ask you if you have WooCommerce, but even if you add it later, you can manage the WooCommerce settings. And we give you the ability to configure some extra stuff to improve the WooCommerce performance in there, which is mostly technical. Maybe Wes, you can touch on all those.
One of the biggest challenges with WooCommerce sites as they grow is that the way most WooCommerce grow is in their product base. So they'll start with 10 products. They might end up with 25 or 30,000 products. Once they start getting to those sort of product levels, one of the things that WordPress by default struggles with is the ability to search and locate products, or find uniqueness in products. So we partner with Elasticpress, and with Elasticsearch, we natively deploy Elasticsearch into every WooCommerce site, which significantly improves the user experience for our customers, end users, when they're in the WooCommerce platform. Searches, if you're looking for a product or trying to match products, or they're basically instant, but regardless of how many customers or how many products you have in the space. We also use Lightspeed Enterprise, which is a very high performance web server infrastructure, which has unique optimizations for WooCommerce. For example, one of the challenges in WordPress when it's dynamic is it's very hard to cache. So you can no longer start doing page caching because things are changing on a real-time basis. Our WooCommerce implementation actually allows page caching of the entire WooCommerce infrastructure, that all the way through to the checkout can be page cached in real time, because what it does is automatically monitor all the WooCommerce infrastructure. It monitors changes to product, to quantity, to availability of product, and in the background is dynamically rebuilding those caches. We can also natively cache pages with the checkout cart in a fully cached page. So the page has been entirely cached, but just the checkout bit isn't. So the checkout is being natively updated. So what we do is we look at the spaces that we work in, and we look at adding features that solve problems in sometimes that the customers don't even know they had. One of the other classic ways that we do that is by looking at security as a first-class citizen on our hosting platform. If you come to Rapid, we don't expect you to then have to sort out your security yourself. The traditional WordPress experience, now you've got to go and download WordFence or Security, and the customer's got to be told, and they might do it, or they might forget to do it, or I heard about that, or they might get the free one because they think surely that's good enough, and the next thing they know that they've been hit by a malware attack or some other problem in the infrastructure. We think about security as a first class citizen. Monarchs is a server-based malware security that's real-time watching the entire WordPress space. It's watching PHP, it's tracking and monitoring. And we also put PatchTack on top of that, which is real-time plugin updates and virtual patching of plugins. So what we do is we go, these things are things that customers shouldn't have to think about. We'll deliver those for them. And that's what we believe truly managed WordPress is about. It's helping the customer do what they do best, which is run their site. helping the customer do what they do best, run their community, without them having to worry about those other technologies, automated backups, automatic native object caching, all those sorts of technologies that people get told that they should consider, we built in upfront.
Interesting. So let's jump a bit, like as in like I have a new e-commerce site, a new WooCommerce site. I don't know about Repeat Cloud or anyone. Like if I'm this user, like, and I'm looking for an ideal web host for me. Let's forget the names, but what are the top 5 things, for example, if you were the user, that you should look for in a web hosting? Like, I have a new e-commerce website. I don't know, I have 10 products. I'm just getting started. Typically, what are the top 5 things to make sure that my website is reliable, stable, performs well? Like, what are the top 5 things someone should look out for when looking at a web host and evaluating web hosts, for example?
Wise, you should take that one.
Yeah, honestly. Okay. The most important thing when you're launching any sort of WooCommerce site is discoverability, which means that you need to be visible, which means that you need to be on Google. That's just the bottom line. And when you need to be on Google, you need to be able to rank highly. One of the core metrics, the most important metric, is page speed. If your pages are taking too long to load, or your checkout is taking too long to activate, you're going to be ranked poorly. So focusing on performance from the get-go for anyone in the WooCommerce space. That's how you compete with Shopify. So Shopify's first focus is get that first cart or get that first page up as fast as you can. Same thing with getting that catalog up as fast as you can. So focusing on as a first class process that performance thing, get the page loaded, get it loaded as fast as you can. Certainly also looking at things like making sure that your platform is on a CDN, so that as much of that page is shared from as close to your customers as possible. At Rapid, we use CDN, which natively caches the entire website, all front-facing pages at edge, which means that across our distributed CDN worldwide, there are copies, the latest live copies of all those pages. What that means is that for a large percentage of first visits to our site, the data is coming straight from a CDN that could be in a data center 50 kilometers from their house. So they're the 2 high priorities. The third thing that we say is important is getting your security stack right. Sort of thinking about the fact that instead of, my site just went down, think about it first. Make sure that you've got your security sorted. Unfortunately, WordPress is a hugely large ecosystem. 43.5% of the world's websites run on WordPress. Some 890 million websites potentially in that space. What that means is it's a giant, great big target. The biggest target. If you're a malware attacker, WordPress is the place to attack because there is so much there. And unfortunately, WooCommerce sites are the biggest target. Why? Because they have a lot of valuable data. They have customer data. They also have price and product data. It sounds silly, but people make a living out of scraping WooCommerce sites' product lists. They just continually scrape them every day, and then they sell that data to your competitors. Sort of, it's because they're going, this data is valuable. So looking at how you manage your security, making sure that when they're scraping your site, that your user list isn't accidentally visible. Sort of making sure that, again, you're not vulnerable. You're not going to wake up one morning and discover that your site's pointing to a online casino in Central Europe, as has happened in the past. So I think they're the biggest 3, or the top 3 things. Then there's a shopping list after that. Obviously, with WooCommerce, it's all about design. Your site's got to be attractive. It's got to look good. Making sure, and there are many ways to do that. There are good themes and products out there, and also making sure that the user experience for your product is good. Making sure that when they arrive at your site, that it's navigatable, that that they can find things, and that's something that at Rapid we spend a huge amount of time on with their own dashboard, is ensuring that that user experience is designed to be simple and for the buttons to be where we want them. You occasionally see a WooCommerce site where the shopping cart checkout is on the bottom left-hand corner for some reason. It's like, but if it's always up at the top right.
Yeah.
Don't overthink it. Sort of. So I guess they're the big takeaways.
Interesting. So on top of security, of course, there's always performance and speed. So when someone says, we hear it quite often, like my website is slow. Like, in your opinion, what are the very first steps, kind of like, to quantify that user's perception? Like, are there any free tools that users can use to say, okay, this looks slow, let me try some other hosting or whatever? Like, what tools can users use, if it's WooCommerce or not, like to quantify it feels slow, kind of thing?
Look, the first one is obviously online servers like GTmetrix. Everyone with a Google Chrome web browser has effectively Lighthouse built in. They can go into their inspector and say, run Lighthouse, which will give them a metric on what a page load speed is like. And there are also plugins available in the WordPress space. There's a plugin from Kevin Ohashi who does the yearly web performance assessment for WordPress hosts. It's called WP Performance Tester. It's a simple tool. It runs, you install it as a plugin, it runs for about 5 seconds and produces a score. Now, it's a synthetic score. It's not supposed to be, the best value in the world. But what it does is it reports how many WordPress queries your website can handle in a given period of time. And it doesn't matter what website you run it on. The number of queries is accurate. So if you're on a slower server, well, those number of queries might be 300 or 400 queries in the test window. On a high performance server, like servers like Rapid, it can be 2,000, 2,500 queries per second, and that's a guide to how fast your server is. If your servers can generate those WordPress queries faster, it's obviously going to be able to deliver the data faster.
Interesting, very interesting. I never heard of the plugin from Kevin Ohashi. Good, I'll take a look, definitely. In fact, that kind of goes hand in hand. I was looking at your website and saw a case study of an interesting company, because I knew about them, Happy Pair, and they talk about this thing, like they had this problem, they didn't know what to do because they had a lot of visitors, website was down, and someone from your team said okay, we'll solve it for you, and you solved it. Like when you are facing these type of scenarios or problems, how do you go about solving such a problem? As in, how do you dive in, first of all, find what the problem is, and how do you solve it for it? Technically, do you provide PHP? Do you check as you said, maybe you run some plugins to check which queries are taking too long? How is the whole process?
You start with benchmarking exactly the same way. Happy Pair is an interesting customer. They're running BuddyBoss app, so entirely headless WordPress, big customer base, big business, running out of Dublin, Ireland. Teaching people how to prepare and cook vegan lifestyle,
healthier and vegan.
So WP Performance Tester was the first benchmark that we actually ran on their site. They had a hosting that they had built. They were spending a lot of money on. They'd tried to do all the right things. They had a hosting partner, but unfortunately that score came back, I think, at about 450 queries per second. And so immediately that set off warning bells. In that highly complicated, Happy Pair is Buddy Boss, it's got LearnDash, it's got Elementor, it's got, you can tick off. It's got custom post types, it's got a recipe, a customly natively built recipe tool, it's got Buddy Boss app all running React Native. So it had all of the benchmarks of this site the server needs to have high performance. So looking at it, again, WP Performance Tester, as I said, produce low results. We have some other tools that we run. We look at database management and a heap of things like that. We assess, there's tools like Query Monitor, which is another great WordPress product, that came back showing us some just horribly slow query responses. Of course, custom post types can get complex, and the results can effectively slow your site down. And that was, I guess, the start of the conversation we had with them. Obviously, Happy Pair is a customer, and they're a Buddy Boss customer. They're a Rapid customer, and we know them very well. We work with them. They went from a site which was, as I said, about 800 maybe highest query response to a site which now is about 24 to 2,500 queries per second. So obviously it's generating them. And what that translates to is the page is generated faster. And the amount of time that the page takes to generate has significant impact, not just on the single page experience, but it has significant impact on concurrency. See, the longer an individual page takes to create, the longer the PHP worker underneath it is running exclusively for that page build. Now, every web server has a hard limit on the number of PHP workers that are available. And it's controlled by the amount of RAM that's available and a bunch of other factors. Regardless of people that say, oh, unlimited PHP workers, unless there's a server with unlimited memory, unlimited PHP workers is a challenge. But the amount of time that page takes to build controls, to a large extent, the concurrency of the site. If a page is taking a whole second to create, then that PHP worker is not available to do any other tasks for that whole second. If it's taking 2 seconds, the same. So what we want to do is ensure that the page build, that part of the process that runs through PHP and renders that HTML back to the server, happens as fast as it can, so that PHP worker can free up to handle more users. And if you've got a site like Happy Pair, where they could have potentially 20,000 people showing up on a Thursday night to their weekly webinar, or it could be a couple of hundred or 500 people showing up to a yoga class on a weekday morning, they need concurrency as much as they need the performance. So with Rapid, we've built specifically to handle those challenges as well.
Very interesting. So, you mentioning, because even Michael mentioned before, like with Buddy Boss, for example, it's something like it's very difficult to cache because, of course, you have a lot of real-time interactions. What are the best? Are there of course, there's the part which the web hosting provider takes care of, but for the user themselves, the website owner, are there things, for example, I don't know, with Buddy Boss, Michael, that users can do to opt before they look into the web host, that they can do to optimize that bottleneck between the web application and database, or any maintenance tools they can use or stuff like that?
This is still all these questions go to Wes.
Sorry.
Honestly, you can already tell listening to him. Wes is
Yeah.
like a walking encyclopedia.
That's for sure. That's for sure. Yeah.
There are three things that assist in getting a server to run faster. One is a cool tool called OP caching, which is a way of accelerating the speed of PHP. For more modern servers, there's something called just-in-time compiling, which is a Zend extension for object caching. For OP caching. And then there is object caching, which is Redis, what we come to know as Redis. These are tools that, if you're not running an OP cache on your server, or you can't configure OP cache, unfortunately that's the case with a lot of shared hosts, your PHP will run up to 50% slower, because it has to recompile the PHP code every page request. If you've got OP cache available, then the first time the PHP is built, it's compiled and then stored in memory, and then can be reused. So we get significant improvements just by enabling OP caching. When you've got a big complex server like BuddyBoss, we can see like a BuddyBoss activity feed. You think about that, the Facebook page, it's got hundreds of comments and posts and likes and lots of users, and this person liked this. And so to build that page and render it requires a lot of access to the database. It's got to do database queries to construct all that information, get all the users' avatars, get all their real names, and link and cross-reference all those the security, and is this person banned this person from looking at their post, all that complexity. So when that runs, that activity feed could in theory generate 1,500 to 2,000 database requests. Just to load a single page. Tools like object caching and Redis allow us to cache in memory those commonly used requests. So let's cache all of our user memory. Let's cache all that user profile data. And what that means is that when that page runs, instead of having to go and ask MariaDB or MySQL database for that information, it can quickly look in local stored memory and say, hey, Redis, do you have a copy of that last query? And if it does, pull it back in. Rapidly or massively increases the speed, but also reduces the amount of work that the database is doing. And again, as you get busy, these are all the things that we want to improve when we're talking about concurrency. If you've got 1,000 people all trying to load an activity feed at the same time, that's 1,000 times 1,000, that's 1 million or 2 million database requests slamming your MariaDB or your MySQL database. If we can minimize that by caching a lot of that into memory, we improve performance again. So yeah, I mean, it's about those things that are the first steps, but a lot of it is complemented by server performance. It really is.
I'll add a couple things. So the other thing is a BuddyBoss site does not live in isolation. Typically, these customers have many other plugins on there. Yeah. And that's a big factor. So if you have a BuddyBoss site just alone, that's one thing. Sometimes a customer will have 50 other plugins, and some of those plugins are not efficient and interact with each other in weird ways, and that impacts performance also.
Yeah, it's a big challenge in terms of complexity. The biggest feature of WordPress, or its biggest selling, was the fact that we can add 1 million plugins. There's always a plugin for something. The second biggest feature is what we call the ability to hook plugins into each other, which means that if you've got WooCommerce, you can then add 50 other plugins, which might be a WooCommerce widget or a WooCommerce something, and they all integrate with each other. But underlying that technology is still a PHP stack, which has to run all that code, and it has to run it on every page request. So the more complexity you add, in fact, the more you reduce the actual performance of your site. So there is an importance to find balance. One of the things that I previously had an agency of my own doing BuddyBoss performance optimization, and LearnDash and TutorLMS and other site performance optimizations. One of the things that we find with complex sites is that you actually reach a point where it's actually better to start talking to a developer about finding ways to get rid of those plugins. In a lot of cases, people are installing a plugin that could be quite a large plugin for one feature. And that one feature could actually be created in like a 50 or 100 line snippet of PHP code. But instead, we load a plugin which has got 1,000 PHP files and a heap of other architecture. So we spent a lot of time, and certainly a number of the BuddyBoss agencies and teams that we work with, looking at ways to optimize those sites as they get to performance. And one of the ways we often find of doing that is, let's go through all your plugins. Let's identify the ones where you literally are using it to, I just want a short code that allows me to put the customer's avatar in the top left-hand side of the screen or something. But they've installed Avatar Pro Plus 2000 version, which they didn't really need. It could have been done with a 5-line short code. So it's about thinking laterally sometimes as well.
Yeah, in fact, it was going to be my next question. Like on top of what the web host can do, like what can the website owner do to make sure, of course, like they have a performant website. One of them is clearly, as you were saying, is plugins. We've seen it a lot myself. Yesterday, I participated in a summit, the Page Builder Summit, and we were talking about these things. Like I was talking to a few agency owners. I don't know how many clients they've had. They had 4 different security plugins or 4 different. One of them actually they were telling me they had EasyJill downloads, WooCommerce, and something else. So like three different eCommerce. Like, do you really need? So I think maybe, and I also like as you said, like in my opinion, the 2 main selling points of WordPress are it's easy to use, and you can install as much plugins as you want. But they're also it's like this is because it's easy to use. It's good, of course, because you are opening everyone nowadays. You don't need to be technical, can have a website.
Yeah.
But however, the downside to that is people who don't have experience of what it takes to run a website, especially as it grows. They're going to set up a website, and all of a sudden, instead of saying like, "Oh, I don't know what I'm doing, so my website is slow," they're going to say like, "WordPress is slow." So it's a bit of a So like
it is a challenge. And this is what we call the success problem with WordPress. Unfortunately, WordPress has started to get a bit of a name as being slow. It has started to get a bit of a name that says, oh, WordPress doesn't scale very well. And what we see is a bleed to SaaS products of customers going, well, WordPress isn't living up to what I hoped it would be, and therefore I'm starting to look at Shopify or Teachific or Circle.io or Mighty Networks or some other SaaS tool. But the reality is, if you are careful, if you work with a hosting provider that understands the needs of dynamic scalability, you optimize and build your websites appropriately. What BuddyBoss has shown and Rapid has shown is that WordPress can scale very well. WordPress can grow, and it gives you a couple of things that none of those SaaSes do. Firstly, you own your data. If you're on a SaaS, your data is now Shopify's, or your data is now Teachific. Your customer list is effectively theirs. So you own your data, so you have data security. And the second thing is you have infinite flexibility. If you're on Shopify or if you're on Teachific, you do it their way. You can't step outside those bounds. WordPress is still amazingly flexible and has that ability to step outside. It has that ability for someone to go, no, I would like to do this way. And that's the power of WordPress, that you can. So, sort of what we're positioning ourselves to say is that WordPress can scale, and it does. WordPress is powerful and flexible, and you own your data at all times.
Yes, very good point. In fact, while you were talking, I was thinking, with WordPress, you have all the flexibility in the world. It's open source, so you can literally tweak it as much as you like. However, as you're saying, with an SAS, you're stuck to their terms, quite frankly. But there's, as we were saying as well, there's the user, I wouldn't call it the user problem, but you're dealing with users who might not have experience. Like how at Rapid Cloud, like, is it like a big factor? Because like, I assume someone who has an e-commerce website, a successful e-commerce website, they say, I don't know, soft toys. So they have nothing to do. They're not technical. How difficult or easy it is to deal with these people, with these type of customers, and I don't know, show them, work with them. Okay, don't use this plugin, or why? How do you go about explaining all this? Because even like you said, even security, you take care of it. I'm sure sometimes we are a security company. Sometimes people look at security as if it's slowing down their productivity, or I don't want to. How do you go about working with users and explaining to them like it's needed, like educating the user kind of thing?
Okay. One of the things that we decided to do when we created our support team was to put developers in our support team.
Very good.
A lot of our support team come across from BuddyBoss. They have possibly built a plugin of their own, or they've been coding. They deeply understand WordPress. And what that allows us to do is to develop a relationship with our customers, which doesn't involve us saying, oh, you should go back to your developer, because that's obviously where the fault is. We have a very different conversation. We have developers, we have DevOps teams that will work with customers. They'll go into their sites. We are a managed WordPress infrastructure, and it's important for us that the customer's site is always up and it's always performant. So we'll do things like performance optimization. We'll actually give them full guidance on performance optimization in our platform. We have a new performance optimization product coming out in a couple of months' time. Oh, actually, I think it's in about a month's time now, which will fully assess a customer's site. We'll give them a breakdown of the plugins, the infrastructure, the settings on their site, and give them guidance in ways to achieve the best performance possible. I think the other challenge with that is that we care, if that's the polite way to put it, we care about the success of our customer sites because their success is our success at the end of the day. So we have a different mentality. That's why we have a live chat. That's why we have a 1 minute average response time in our live chat. That's why we have DevOps teams that will go in and debug sites for people. We don't go, oh, you've got a 500 error. Gee, sorry, you should go and talk to your developer. We'll work with the customer to help.
Interesting. When customers or prospects approach you, may I ask, like, what are the most common problems? I mean, like, why do they come? Of course, you are like promoting managed WooCommerce and better performance, but like, what is usually the problem? Okay, let's say they have a slow website, but what are usually the causes, the number one or top two problems that people usually, or mistakes people usually do on WooCommerce, on top of the web hosting, of course, that makes their website slow or breaks down for them? Like, what are the most common problems?
How long's a piece of string?
Yeah. Good point.
In all honesty, every customer is different.
Yeah.
But we look at them holistically. We look at the customers and say, how can we address your issues? I will say that there is a common problem, and the common problem is a fault of WordPress, and this relates to how WordPress scales. Underlying WordPress is this magic tool, this magic database, which allows us to create custom post types in particular. And it does this by storing all the data in a single or two tables. It's a post table and it's a post meta table. It stores all the data in the same place. Unfortunately, it doesn't scale as well as it could. And the reason for that is just to do with indexes and the way the database optimizations are. So you can wind up with well-meaning plugin developers that have built, a really nice little custom post type, and it might add I don't know, we might have decided we want to have a customer type, or it might be a unique product definition or type. And that data is stored in this post meta table. And every time it hits the checkout, it goes out and tries to query that table to try and get some information. While the site's only got 50 products on it or 100 customers on it, it's not a problem. But when that site has grown to 50,000 or 100,000 customers, or it's grown to 20 or 30,000 products, the query required to generate that, can you look up all the products and see if there's any matches? Or you might be trying to do an upsell. Have you also considered this? The amount of resources that are required might result in millions of database table record reads because the database isn't efficient. So we help with customers by looking at those databases and looking at whether we can optimize indexes outside of the WordPress space. We had a customer recently that had exactly that problem at their checkout. They'd get the customer to the checkout and then they were losing customers. Site was reasonably fast. And we'd moved it to rapid. The site was, page response was under a second. Fantastic. Hit the checkout. 48 seconds. It was exactly that. And we worked with them, and we showed them how to add some extra indexes, primarily an index on the value column of the post meta table, and their site went from 38 seconds in checkout to under half a second in checkout.
It's an amazing
It
meant
that their customers weren't leaving while they were waiting for the checkout to load.
Exactly.
We see those results often, by the way. Yeah. Those types of results. We see those types of results fairly often. That a customer will have a 20-second load time or a 15-second load time. And we'll
15
bring them
seconds,
over.
is it normal? 15, 20?
Well, it's not. It shouldn't be normal, but
It shouldn't
see
be, yeah,
customers
but
have it because they'll have something dynamic. They'll have Buddy Boss or they'll have WooCommerce. They'll have something where they have a lot of people interacting, and they'll be on inadequate hosting, and we'll bring them over, and it'll come down to under a second. We've had this experience so many times.
We were on I was on a client demonstration recently, and they were saying one of the WordPress is horribly slow. It's so hard to use, and we're going, okay, can you show us the problem? And they went, all right, let's log in. And we were on a live stream, and I said, okay, let's go to WP Admin. And he went, I'll be back. And he went off and made a coffee, for the want of a better word. It took that long to get into WP Admin. He said, now let's go to the plugins tab, and it took even longer. And this was this guy's experience. Every time he went in to create a new product in his LearnDash, in his WooCommerce, or went into Gutenberg, Page Builder or Elementor, it was exactly that. So he just went, it's WordPress.
Mhm.
He's now on Rapid, and his page loads are under half a second everywhere. He just assumed that that's what it was. It's WordPress. It's slow. So the experience we have is that by optimizing and look, respectfully, we are on the highest performance cloud infrastructure currently available on the planet.
Nice.
At this stage, and we will always be. We will continue to evolve our platform, and that's why our metrics. That's why you look at. We can scale to 192 CPU cores. We can scale people to 3/4 of a terabyte of RAM in their server if they really need it. But we can also generate pages incredibly quickly.
And we can scale to over 1,000 PHP workers.
Wow. Yeah. And as you were saying, like that's why WordPress is getting that name, that it's slow, because people, they make the mistake. It's the same with security. Like if you look at the statistics, like Peshtek and Sukuri published a joint report a few weeks ago. Like all the other previous ones in the last 10 years, the biggest problems are vulnerabilities in plugins and credentials problems. So by just keeping your software up to date, if you keep your software up to date and use these insecure passwords and maybe 2FA, like we eliminate half of these problems right away. But WordPress is changing slowly, but it's also got the name that it's very insecure, basically, and it's because mainly it's user problem more than anything else, kind of thing.
It's not WordPress that's insecure.
Exactly, it's a user problem, user generated problem.
It's that plugins, well-meaning and well-written plugins, unfortunately, are written by human beings who don't necessarily have a degree in security, vulnerability management. So we do wind up with situations where a vulnerability gets into a plugin. We had a situation recently. I was talking to one of the leads of the plugin development team, the plugin approvals team at WordPress. .org, and they were saying that they're starting to see AI-generated plugins coming into the WordPress.org repository, and they're coming in with vulnerabilities baked in.
Yes,
because the AI has read, the PHP code of 60,000 plugins, and it's read the vulnerabilities as well. So it's and it's nothing's infallible. So sort of. Security, as I said, security is vitally important. And it's got to be at the top, the bottom, and in the middle. We currently don't do the middle, and that's an area which we leave to people like MailerPress, your 2FA tools, and those sort of tools. We don't do because it's such a disparate area. It's an area it's hard for us to control. We can control the bottom by putting a Monarchs level, server levels in a malware. We can say you've got to have patch stack on top, but that middleware it's a big ground. But certainly, sort of your 2FA tools and what you guys do in the credential stack, sort of is again vitally important. To cover all those angles across the board.
Exactly. Yeah, the problem is you will always have vulnerabilities. The biggest problem is when it comes to vulnerabilities, in most cases, if a vulnerability is discovered, as long as the vendor issues a patch within a reasonable time, all is good. The problem is that people fail to update their plugins. I mean, I look at we had a migration, I think 2 years ago, we changed the database structure of our activity log database 2 years ago. Till this day, sometimes we receive an email like, "Hi, I just updated the plugin and this this migration process failed." Yeah, okay, because you are running a plugin that is 4 years old, and now you're starting like 4 years later. You realize till then we release, I don't know how many, on average release 15 updates per year. So like 60 updates later, you realize that you need to update the plugin.
And they still have it. Oliver, I was talking with Oliver Sid recently, and he just posted a blog only last week about a new vulnerability that was in the wild. From the time it was announced to the time the first live attack was seen in the wild was under an hour and a half.
Wow, that's
So vulnerabilities are real.
Of course.
You don't update your plugins. There's a statistically solid chance right now. We look at our patch stack logs, and we see, something like 8,500 to 10,000 vulnerabilities being patched in real time every day.
Yep.
Inside our platforms. At our server level, real time, we have a Rust-based malware tool, which basically looks at the things that look strange. So instead of looking at signatures and going, "Oh, this signature's tripped," it's going, "Hang on a minute, something's trying to write a what looks like an encrypted, obfuscated file to the temporary folder." And it flags them. We're seeing new 0-day type attacks like that every week. It used to be that it happened once a year. No, this is like happening now. Rob from Monarchs was telling me recently that they're seeing something like 20,000 new vulnerabilities every 3 months.
Wow. Yeah, the rate is impressive, and it will increase even more, as you said, with AI. Oliver from Patrick was saying as well, like the number of people going on AI, like write my own security plugin. They write their own security plugin. They run it on their website, and they're actually introducing new issues rather than improving them. So yeah, it's and with AI, it's a bit of a double-edged sword. As in, like, it's really good, of course, because it helps you automate a lot of stuff and be a bit more productive. But at the same time, if you're not careful, it's going to introduce a lot of issues as well.
I think one of the things that people don't understand, unfortunately, also about WordPress is how vulnerable it is to things like cookie stealing, how vulnerable it is to the fact that, there's entire dark web, repositories out there selling stolen, WordPress, signatures and cookies and authentication cookies, we have a policy that people should update their salt keys on a regular basis. And most people go, "What?"
Every few months at least. They should be rehashed.
Yeah, exactly. They should be rehashed. There's people who don't even know what that is and never done it, and then wonder why. Oh, we've got this new admin user in our site.
Yeah, of course. I wonder why.
Sad to hear, but it does happen. So yes. Look, all these things in the WordPress space are not WordPress. WordPress itself is fairly solid. Its core repository of code is fairly solid. The WordPress security team inside the Make team are very proactive in WordPress's own security. But every plugin that we add, every well-meaningly written plugin, big plugins. We had Elementor Pro and WooCommerce. If you had them both on your server at the same time with specific versions of the plugin, your entire site was vulnerable to it was actually a registration escalation attack where you could basically get an administrator account on a person's server, and it took 4 lines of PHP of code to achieve it. And that's two of the biggest plugin developers in the world.
I mean, like, there's no vulnerability-free software. I mean, like, it's not just WordPress, any software. The question is not like if they have vulnerabilities; it's like when it will be found. So it's just about keeping things up to date, using software like WordPress. Time is running out. There's so much more we can talk about, especially security. We're just scratching the surface. Definitely try to schedule something again. In the meantime, is there anything maybe that we forgot to mention that you'd like to mention before we close this?
Last thing I'll mention is that for a new customer coming to us, when they first come to us, we will review their site and make sure everything's set up to come over, and then we do a free migration to Rapid Cloud. So it's very easy to switch over.
Nice. I really like the idea that you review their site, and that really, of course, makes a big difference.
Yeah, we want to make sure that it's going to perform well, because that's our promise. So we're looking at their site, making sure the stack is correct, making sure their PHP version is correct, etc.
Nice.
And equally, WordCamp Europe is on in 3 weeks' time, the 4th to the 7th of June. We'll be there. We have a booth. I'll be there as well at Contributor Day. Just talking about things like Five for the Future, sustainability, and hosting in general. So anyone that wants to pop over and say hi.
Yeah, and same here.
We're only too happy to chat to people.
Good. Well,
I definitely all things WordPress.
Definitely, and I'll definitely come and visit your booth. Please feel free to come over, take some merchandise. Yeah, we'll keep in touch. Thanks a lot, everyone.
We've all got to swap our swag.
Exactly. Yeah, that's something that we should all do. Yeah. Thanks a lot, everyone. Thanks. Just a quick reminder: we do this every Thursday at 4 p.m. Central European Time or 11 a.m. Eastern Time. And you can always ask us any questions if you have. And don't forget to like and subscribe. And we'll see you next week. Thanks, Michael. Thanks, Waze. To the next
Thank you.
one.
Thanks for having us.
We'll see you in Basel. Thanks.
Bye
bye.